everyone. Welcome to the Lawyer Lifter Podcast, or Mel's Minutes, where I talk about lifting, life, and business. So welcome to the Lawyer Lifter Podcast. It has been some time, and it is the long-awaited Mel's birth story. And I definitely have a lot to say, a lot of unadulterated, candid commentary. And actually, Winter, my son, this is my firstborn, his projected delivery date / birth date would have been today, July 10th. But actually, he arrived a full 2 weeks early, June 28th, and he came with no apologies, just full on, like, I am here. And let me start from the beginning, because in hindsight, my physicians, his pediatrician, my birth doula, my night nanny are all behind the fact that the reason for Winter's birth and the delivery / labor was due to the fact that I have such a background in strength and in being an athlete. So I definitely want to plug that. I will 150% say that it is true. It is like literally science. It's medicine. You have got to keep yourself active, but actually it's in strength. So let me tell you why. Everybody knows I've been training since I found out I was pregnant, 4 weeks up until the day before I gave birth. I was deadlifting. So June 27th in the afternoon, I was deadlifting. And I'll also tell you guys, everybody's like, oh, what do you do like to induce labor? I was doing the things that Karen Fields, my birth doula, had said. She was like, oh, like take raspberry red leaf tea, eat some dates, bounce on your birth ball. I was doing all that, but it's a joke between my husband, John, and I that what did I do to induce the labor on June 28th? Well, like I deadlifted. I also had In-N-Out and I had ice cream. So if you want to induce your labor, you definitely want a history in strength training and even that Last Supper. So this is what happened. Okay, you guys, like there is a 5-1-1 rule. 5 minutes of your contractions. So 5 minutes apart between your contractions, lasting 1 minute for 1 hour. That means you're in fucking labor. So I woke up around 2:30 and my contractions were textbook 5-1-1. So, you should also know a fact. If you are a first time mom, your labor from the time of your first real contraction until baby pops out is typically between like 12 hours and above. It could be even 24 hours. It could be 48 hours. And even some women labor through 24 or 48 hours and they end up with a C-section. That's because when we talk about labor and delivery, there is a, part of labor where it's just kind of you're laboring at home. You don't want to go to the hospital too early because they can't do anything for you because baby has to come out at 10 centimeters. It's like fact, because that's the width, that's, like the cervix has to open to that and then you push baby out. And there's a point of active labor. That's when you're pretty much there. And then there's a cutoff for your epidural. So based on that, let me jump the gun. From the time of my first contraction to the time Winter was born at 9:23 a.m., it was 7 hours. That is not realistic. I don't know why that happened. And I also found that I pushed Winter out in less than 5 minutes, about 2.5 minutes. And that is a consequence of the fact that I know how to use my body and I know what it means to push. Now, for those of you who are powerlifter females, the cue is when you push, that's like you're bearing down. That's like you're pushing your feet through the ground. That is the same force that is required for you to push a baby out of your vagina. And I will tell you that I used to be very timid when it came to squatting and deadlifting, like upwards to 300 on a squat, 400 to deadlift. That's gone no more. So all of those like anticipating my return back to powerlifting, like those numbers are done. I don't give a shit because I just pushed like a pretty good sized baby out in like less than 5 minutes. And so I pushed Winter out with such force, I broke several blood vessels in my neck and like in my eye and in my face. In fact, he was born with a little bit of a broken blood vessel in his eye that mimicked the same because of the force. It's gone now. But so back to that labor story. So my contractions started between 2 and 2:30, textbook 511. And because John and I had been preparing, all of our preparation was, okay, first time mom, we're going to be hanging out here with birth doula Karen for like hours before we even get to Hogue because, you know, we expected that. So I told John, you know, like, let's hang out. Let's just tell Karen. Let's not even tell my OBGYN because it's not a big deal. Like, this is the very beginning. We're in for several hours. And so Karen basically was there on the phone every hour because we didn't feel like it was necessary yet for her to come. But it turns out, again, I have a very high tolerance for pain. And we were here laboring until probably 5 when I told John, you know, I think it's time to call Dr. Pincus, my OBGYN, and kind of like clue her in that I've been laboring since like 2:30. When we called her, she was like, oh, these are really like textbook contractions. Just go to Hogue. And I was like, oh, okay. So what was weird around 5:30, once we placed that call to Dr. Pincus, I told John, okay, like, let's get ready. I was still able to form words, like cohesive sentences. I went to the bathroom, boom, like what we call the mucus plug or the bloody show. That mucus plug is what is in your vagina uterus that protects the baby from like bacteria. And so when you start laboring or a baby is ready, like that's the thing that comes out. It's also a precursor to your water breaking. My water did not break. They broke my water bag when I was in the hospital. So I went to the bathroom, that mucus plug like came out, and suddenly I fell to the ground and I could not get up. And the contractions had just gone from this more, yes, it was awful, to this searing, blinding, insane pain. And for the first time in the time I've been with John, I told him, I can't do this. We're not going to make it. And like, I just sat there and we had our hospital bag completely packed. But the one thing we didn't account for was how do we get me in clothes? And so I don't know how either John or myself were able to do this, but we got myself in clothes. We painfully got myself down the stairs, and like in the kitchen, I was just on all four, my hands and knees, just rocking myself because the labor contractions are no joke. It is, yes, they say it starts as menstrual cramps, but it escalates into, as I said, like you're in so much pain that you cannot even form words. And the last, unfortunately, the last memory my pets had of me before we left was just me like screaming in pain in the kitchen floor. All four of my cats were surrounding me like bewildered. And John, we got me into the car. So much pain. I wasn't even in a seatbelt. I wasn't even facing forward. I was on my hands and knees in the front seat, and we were really concerned because it was a Wednesday, rush hour. We're about 20 minutes from Newport Beach, Hogue, and so John was going like 100 miles an hour. And I will tell everybody that actually I chose Hogue Newport Beach for winter because it has such a stellar facility for anything having to do with the birth of your child. So let me give you guys a rundown of how Hogue Newport Beach is. There is a women's center just completely dedicated to women and their children, and there's a valet. Triage is there on the ground level, ready to, move you to where the floor called labor and delivery, which is actually also a floor that's like the ICU for, infants. So this facility is ready to tackle any kind of like emergency. So based on that, I made the decision to let's go to Hogue Newport Beach. So we get to Hogue Newport Beach around, 6 or 6:30. And I was in so much pain. I was in such active labor that the like triage nurses were asking John, like, is this your second or third child? And we were like, John was like, no, this is our first kid, because I was so advanced in the contractions. And lo and behold, on triage, they did a cervix check, and I told you guys, it takes 10 centimeters to get ready to push. I was 6 centimeters when we got to Hogue, and I was screaming my freaking face off. I told you, number one, everybody knows my reputation here. I'm a hard ass, badass boss lady. I don't cry. I don't show like any kind of semblance of pain. I was beside myself in pain. So they got me. I was screaming for an epidural, not knowing what that really, really even was, what it even looked like. I just needed like relief from this god awful pain. They took me, got all my clothes off, got me in a gown, took me to where actually I would be pushing. So it's a room that is equipped to deal with checking baby in one corner, and then also for mom with the whole team to deliver baby. So there, the only people with me were John and my birth doula, Karen. Thank God. Like, one of the big things I want you guys to know, get yourself a damn birth doula, because Karen was so attentive and so good at helping me remember to breathe and to tap into my strength. On top of that, like we didn't have anybody. Like John was not able to contact any one of my firm members. Like this was the first time in Uplift history where nobody had access to me. I didn't even know where my phone was. None of my family even knew, because we had thought that this was going to be a long, drawn out process. No need to like alert anybody sleeping that this was happening. The only people with me were John and Karen. So we get 15 minutes pass from when they took my cervix measurement and wheeled me into labor and delivery, and they took another cervix check, and I was 8 centimeters dilated. The anesthesiologist came, and thank God I made the like final mark, because there's a point where they won't give you an epidural. And let me tell you, ladies, like an epidural is a-okay. Like, don't be afraid of an epidural, because you will feel the baby. Like it just removes the contraction pain, but the baby is going to push, and that pressure is going to cue you to like push. So we're at 8 centimeters dilated. Everything is moving crazy fast. I told you 7 hours. And the contractions, like the nurses were saying, your body's really contracting. Your body's really contracting. And they said that my OBGYN was coming. She was racing. I told you guys that we called her pretty late because we thought this was going to be a long, drawn-out process. And they took my cervix measurement again, and I was 9.5. And I could not, for the love of me, hold Winter. But I did want to wait until my OBGYN, so it just couldn't happen. They called a laborist, which is a doctor or physician who's there on call, who does like the labor and deliveries if your own OBGYN's not there. I just couldn't hold the baby. So there we all are. And I could not wait for Dr. Pincus. I pushed Winter out, and I will tell you, I have never exerted that much strength until that final push. And what was really amazing about Hoag was that they followed my birth plan to the T. In my birth plan, I had written that I wanted to feel my baby's head. In the event that I would get tired or didn't want to do this anymore. And the nurse on my right side, and everybody, even John was on my left side, and Karen too, everybody was just telling me to push. That nurse on my right had taken my hand and put my hand where Winter's head was. He was crowning. And she's like, we need one good push. Do you feel your baby's head? And as soon as I could feel Winter's head, I just pushed. And I am pretty sure I remember hearing a visceral gut like roar out of me to push that baby out. And, you know, if you know me, I'm 4'10". Pre-pregnancy, I walk around between 116 and 120 pounds. Even when I was pregnant, I was still pretty petite. And Winter came out 7 pounds, 7 ounces, 20 inches. And so he came out, and the protocol is golden hour. So what they do is they were able to take him out. John cut the umbilical cord. We elected for cord preservation, cord blood and tissue preservation. They did that. I told you that mom at Hoag has all eyes on baby, because in that same room they have a spot there that the baby nurse or whoever professional is able to clean up and check baby's vitals, so that mom has all eyes on baby. So they were able to do that. I was able to bond with Winter right when he came out, because they just cleaned him up really quick, placed him, and I was like freaking amazed that after 9 months, a whole ass human being came out. Like, that's just, if you literally think about it, he was like a bunch of cells. Like, and then he came out with fully formed, freaking nuts. He came out absolutely healthy. And then that was the best that I could ever hope for. But then it spiraled completely out of control. And again, I will plug Hoag Newport Beach, because I told you guys I only picked this facility for my son. In the event anything happened, this facility would be able to treat him, etc. Winter didn't even come out with jaundice or anything. He was like 100% like healthy and perfect. And everybody was saying how great it was that he came out screaming, because that's what they want the babies to come out, like screaming because it's like clearing out, their airways or whatever, and they're breathing. And so that's not when a woman pops out the baby, thank God. I did have a 2nd-degree tears, very normal. So, Dr. Pincus arrived just as soon as winter arrived. She took over from the laborist, Dr. Chu, and started to sew me back up and tell me like everything was fine, very minimal tearing. Thank God, no episiotomy. It was just all natural. And the next part is you got to get rid of that placenta. The placenta is a living organ that your body makes to like feed and house your baby. If it doesn't come out, your body thinks that there's still something that is living in you and will tell your body to keep funneling nutrients and blood to the placenta if it remains, which causes hemorrhaging in the female body because there's nothing in there. So what had happened was Dr. Pincus and the nurses were trying to remove the placenta the natural way, which sucks, compressing my abdomen to coax that placenta out. And I was dead tired. I told you I had the lifts of my life, essentially. And Dr. Pincus had said, I know you're so tired, but we got to get this placenta out. Can you push it out? And so if you can imagine how tired I was, I still had baby on me, and I finally was able to do so. They took baby off to get further clean. John went with them to the other side of the room, and they gave me the usual drugs they would give any female to start clotting, to like stop the bleeding, because that's normal because the placenta had come out. I saw the damn thing. It's massive. Can't believe that's in you too. It literally looks like an alien bag. Like, it's crazy. And by the way, that alien bag, that's the wound that if you have a regular birth, that's what all the women in the world with a vag delivery are healing from. So, and they're healing from any kind of tearing or episiotomy as well. So that came out. We all thought, yay, I got all of my clotting things. I was ready to get winter again, because then immediately they want you to start breastfeeding, like getting your food like regulated with the baby. Like at that time, a mom and a baby's temperature can get synced together. But that unfortunately didn't happen. I started convulsing, and at first I'll just say, when I say there's like a team of mixture of nurses, physicians, like other professionals still there. They will not leave until mom is stabilized. Winter was fine, but like I started convulsing. At first they thought it was the flush of hormones that leaves your body. They call it labor shakes. Because you've got so many hormones that help with the birth of the child, and then it all just like flushes out of you. So they thought that at first, but it all became rather quick because I was convulsing because I was gushing out blood. And then no one could get my blood pressure. I lost consciousness, and I'm saying this in hindsight because now I started to remember fragments of this. I think like late Thursday, because of my condition, we ended up staying from Wednesday all the way to being discharged Friday early afternoon. So what I remember is that it is that whole like out of body experience where you hear things, but you can't do anything because your body is not able to do anything. Whatever your brain is like processing just doesn't make it to, movement. And I distinctly remember not being able to provide any kind of like statement or understanding. And so since I had no one except Karen or John there, and obviously we're married, the physicians, Dr. Pincus, had said to John, holding Winter, that we needed, I needed consent. He needed to give consent because I needed to go into surgery right away for postpartum hemorrhaging due to what they believe were fragments of placenta still stuck in my uterus. And so those fragments were causing like the body to hemorrhage. And I was like losing blood at a very exponential level speed. And I don't even know. I think I'm pretty sure John obviously gave consent, but to not there were risks. Obviously there's like fatality risks. Who can really get all of that out? The loss of blood from labor plus the loss of blood from hemorrhaging. So I just know that I was throwing up. They were pumping me with all kinds of drugs. They restarted the epidural for the surgery. And I'll tell you another thing that is quite PTSD. I am seeing a therapist, not necessarily tied to this, but just I did see my therapist to kind of talk through this, but they keep you awake for this surgery. I don't know why, but I did not look because it is a highly technical surgery too. But I was completely awake, not able to obviously say anything. But I was awake, and the procedure is to go in vaginally with a tool and all kinds of microscope and an ultrasound to find all of the fragments left over and scrape the uterus manually with this little machine, little tool, vacuum. I don't know what it sounded. It sounded to me like a vacuum. I, for the love of me, was not going to go look. So they wheeled me away. And that was my last thought was, I could not communicate with my husband. With Uplift, I've said this to my team, I've said this to my husband, I found it so ironic that, and I'm proud of this, that everybody, all the clients in Uplift have protection. We plug having a living trust, we plug having a prenup, but what was having plans, especially if you have your own business. And I remember, because my brain is still firing, that I have zero plan. All of the plans with everybody were, Mel included, after Winter's birth, and that the hospital was chosen for Winter. The hospital wasn't chosen for me, but I will tell you, absolutely, this hospital will take care of Mom, because there was no hesitancy from the time Winter was born to the time the discovery of me hemorrhaging to we're going into surgery. It was the most insane situation ever. And so once we got into the OR, it was a surreal thing. I'll tell you, one of my guilty pleasures is I hate all lawyer shows, but I love all medical shows, especially the documentary ones. And to see those OR lights on you and just not being able to articulate that I needed to talk to my husband. I needed to tell him like any kinds of plans. Like I had no plans. I needed to, in that event, because it was a very real situation. They tried to tell me again the risks involved in the surgery before doing the surgery. There could be death. There could be another invasive surgery in which they would have to cut my abdomen open and go in and do whatever they needed. So they were telling me these risks, and I couldn't do anything but worry about what would happen to my business, what would happen to the people in my business, what would happen to the clients, that there was nobody in my family, wasn't even there, what would happen to this newborn, and is this really my story? It just seemed insanely surreal, and it kept getting even more surreal once, and I will tell you too, in the documentaries, in a high emergency situation, all of those people, the physicians, the nurses, they're all screaming at each other. So it makes things even more scary for the person who's awake. Although like I was so full of like pain, whatever, to block what they were doing. I couldn't feel anything, but it got even crazier when the doctor was like, we got to order blood. We got to order blood product. We got to order units just in case. And so they were fighting about how many units. Do they really need to get the units? Maybe we wait. And the call was, no, we cannot wait. It might not, we might need it. Long story short, the operation was a success. I did not need to get the blood units. They were able to find everything from like those big fragments. And then I went from that into an infection. And so who knows why, but with Hogue, I went, the operation was a success. They told John, and then I started to have an infection, and John and Winter, I guess they both thought I was back. And then they took Winter again because I had an infection and I had a fever and I was like shaking again and my blood pressure was everywhere. So they started their protocol for sepsis, and that sucked. They pumped me again full of like meds, full of fluids, full of antibodies, and coming from my background, I don't take shit. So like I went from a very virgin-like body where I don't take things to just being pumped with all kinds of fluids, because my veins had collapsed at that point and they were just sticking like everywhere. I mean, I still am recovering from the bruises and from the insane amount of fluid. It's 12 days later. So eventually I was able to be reunited with John and Winter 6 hours later. So when they got me stable, we were finally able to go to the postpartum unit, and the next morning they were able to clear rule out any further semblance of sepsis. They stopped the antibodies. Thank God. We were still, I still needed to be monitored, and Winter monitored, so we stayed another night. But I will tell you, I couldn't ask for a better labor and delivery for Winter. I do not think that any woman should risk their own life, because I was thinking like, wow, I picked Hogue for the birth of my son, but all of that attention went to me, and Hogue was able to act. As I told you, my body went through the ringer. I went from labor to a surgery to an infection, and then to recovery, and then into my body now, yes, is recovering at a more complicated, and is trying to make milk for my son. I think that is a testament to the wonders of the female body, but also another testament to, please, like, pick up a weight, like do that, because it is physician backed that, it's unheard of. Like, my body, because of the strength background, was able to just push and contract and get this baby out 7 hours. Like, it's literally documented. And had I not hemorrhaged, it would have been perfect. Had I not had an infection either. I will also plug that I don't know what women would do at home birth, because you don't know. I will tell you, I am the queen of hypotheticals, of plans. Like, even with my firm, I always have a plan. I had no plan for this. There was no thought in my mind that this would have happened. It's and I can't even think of women who decide to do a home birth. And yes, you want that for your baby, but it's all for naught if you're not there. And that was my biggest thing, was when I was laying there, I was thinking, I can't go out like this. This is the stupidest way to go out. It's like somebody who has a freak accident. And so, no, you have to have the skill and the talent there, because your baby and your partner or your husband, they need you. And so that is something will have to say, if you are thinking of these alternate ways to birth, think also about yourself, because what would you know? We all saw my placenta come out. What we didn't see were the fragments left over. That is something that you don't know unless you are a physician. And how the hell are you going to scrape them out of yourself at home? There was no time for wasted to act. So if you're at home and you can't, and you're hemorrhaging, you don't have the time. You could die between get that placenta situation and waiting for an ambulance. It is, and I don't overreact. I am cool as a cucumber. I'm telling you, I've got all the clients in Uplift who will tell you that I do not exaggerate. I am absolutely fearless when it comes to situations, but I am dead serious when it comes to think about yourself and any kind of hypothetical that would happen if you were to give birth without a facility or physicians that are right there. So I will also plug that you don't turn up your nose when it comes to a birth doula. Do not turn up your nose when it comes to a night nanny. My assistant, Ariana, was able to coordinate the night nanny, Sandra Ochoa, who was on another episode, to come that night I came back from the hospital. I just told you, it's 12 days out. I'm still healing. My healing is going to take, I hope, not that long, because I do want to get back in the swing of things. I do have a postpartum checkup on Thursday, so we'll see about that. But you do need the help. Your body needs to sleep. That's just essential for recovery. And like, had I not had this help, I wouldn't know anything about breastfeeding either, or boobs, or, babies learning curve, breastfeeding. It's not like the movies. It's not a glorious thing where you just take your baby's head and plop them on your boob and then there's milk. That's not how it goes. Like, it is a lot of work. It is very frustrating, because you want to be able to provide for your baby, but there's, stages of breastfeeding. I bet you didn't know that. There's the colostrum, there's like transitional milk, and then your milk comes in, and then you got to make sure that your body keeps producing milk, and your baby wants to eat. And if your baby, like my baby, is not yet proficient in suckling, you have to supplement with some formula as they learn how to really power their suction. And so it is a lot for the body. And again, a testament to females out there, how crazy is that? You can go through all this trauma in your body and then also be a food producer. So I will definitely plug, yes, birth doula, yes, night nanny, yes, do your homework and do a double take and think about where you're birthing, not just for your baby, but for yourself. Because what good is that if you have a beautiful, healthy baby and you're nowhere in sight? So that is the traumatic, but the up and up story of Mel's birth story with Winter. And we are all, hanging in there and doing the damn thing. Crazy. I will be getting off of maternity leave. I know, right? In next week, I've taken 2 whole weeks. I know, right? The very greedy, for maternity. My husband has paternity leave, but stay tuned, because this is a whole new adventure. So thanks again, and I'll catch you guys later on another episode of Lawyer Lifter Podcast. And that wraps up the Lawyer Lifter Podcast, aka Mel's Minutes. Catch this episode on Apple or Spotify. See you next time.